Hey everybody, it's Dan, your friendly fishmonger from dansfish.com, and today we're going to breed an amazing species of betta. It is Betta Imbellis. It's very similar to the betta that you've all seen in pet stores, which is Betta splendens, but it's a wild type betta, Betta Imbellis, and it's peaceful. You can keep groups of them together. So imagine an aquarium full of beautiful male and female bettas getting along, and yeah, displaying, and yeah, a little bit of aggression, but nothing to the point of Betta splendens. So that's what we're breeding here. Let's take a look. Alright, so in this video, I want to show you a few different things. I want to show you how to set them up to spawn. They're just gorgeous when they spawn. It's one of the most beautiful sights in nature, such interesting behavior. But that's not all I want to show you. That's what a lot of videos show and then kind of stop there. But the really tricky part comes later. What's really tricky about these fish is the eggs are small, the babies are very small, so it's raising them. So these little fry in here, they're just free swimming. They've been free swimming for about a day, and I want to take you through not just how to spawn them, but how to raise these little guys so you have success, so that you can actually get them up and distributed, because I'd love to see this fish spread out among the hobby more widely. Here's some juveniles. The big one there, the tank buster, is about 1/4 of an inch, along with a bunch of his little siblings. So that's what the video is about. I'll take you through the entire process, how to set up the spawning container, get them to spawn, how to raise the little babies for the first few weeks when they're pretty difficult to keep. So let me show you the setup here. This is a 5.5 gallon aquarium. Here's our male. And this aquarium has, in back of it here, a glass divider in the corner with the female back there. If you look really close, you can see here. Here, let's look from the top. This will be better. So there it is, the glass divider. The tank only has about 3 inches of water in it, and it's a bare bottom tank. And the reason for that, let's find our female here. There's a glass divider. There she is. You can see her from the top. But the reason there's only 3 inches of water in its bare bottom is so that when they're spawning and the eggs fall down, they don't have to swim down really far to grab them and bring them up to the bubble nest. And the bare bottom is so that it's easy for them to find the eggs when they fall down during the spawning event. So the female has been in here with the male for about 4 days. They've gotten to know each other a little bit. When you take out the divider, it's going to take a couple days before they actually spawn. In my experience, it's around 3 days from the time you remove the divider. So they'll get really excited, the male will display a bunch, but it still takes a little while for them to actually spawn. Now during that time, she's going to need places to hide, because he'll get real aggressive. If they're not spawning, he'll beat her up, just like Betta splendens. So these are called peaceful bettas, the Betta Imbellis, because you can keep groups of them together without any problems, as long as there's plants and places for them to hide and things. Even males can be kept together. But during spawning, the male becomes aggressive, similar to a Betta splendens, so she's going to need a place to hide. So lots of plants are helpful. It's just so that she can get away from him when she needs to. Also, as you can see, there's a spawning mop I've put in here now that that glass divider is gone. A big spawning mop kind of in the back section of the aquarium, so she has plenty of room to swim, to get away from him. And the spawning mop goes all the way from the bottom of the aquarium up to the top of the water column, and that is so she can get up to take her breaths and breathe at the top of the water column like bettas want to do without being seen by the male. It's pretty important that whatever you use as hiding cover for the female, that it extend from the bottom of the aquarium all the way up to the top, so that she can get in there and never have to leave, not have to rush up and get a breath and be exposed and then dive back down. It's a lot less stressful on her, and she gets seen a lot less, so she doesn't get beat up. So anyway, I apologize a little bit because these guys decided to spawn in the middle of this massive clump of water sprite. And so the video, the sight lines aren't as clear as they could be if it was like a bear tank with just a styrofoam cup or something. But I speeded it up here just because it can take a while. So we're on fast forward here, about 4 times normal speed now. But anyway, I'm doing this spawning really trying to get fry, so they decide to spawn where they're going to spawn, and I let them go. There's not a lot of release of eggs that we see in this video, but I know that they did release eggs because we did get quite a few fry. So this was early on in the process here, so these are their dry runs, I guess, when they're not actually dropping eggs yet. Now, something I did notice about these that's different from Betta splendens is they're very efficient. With Betta splendens, there's lots of starts and stops and false starts in the spawning embrace, lots of attempts that don't result in a productive embrace, things like that. But these guys, they get right to the embrace real fast. Every time they go to embrace, they're successful. And I think it just has to do with the difference between being domesticated and being a wild fish. In the wild, while you're spawning, you're very exposed. So it's pretty important that you get through the spawning act as quickly as possible so you don't get eaten by, I don't know, a kingfisher or a larger fish or something like that, right? Birds of prey and other fish, everything's trying to eat these guys. And so I think that's one issue. And then the other reason I think they're just more efficient and quicker at spawning is that they don't have the really long fins that a lot of the Betta splendens have been bred to have. Now here's what I use to feed the babies. This is a 20-gallon long aquarium. It's full of green water. It's a thriving culture of scuds or amphipods. And what I often do is I'll take 4 cups of water out from this in the morning, feed it to a 5.5-gallon tank full of fry, do that again at lunch, do that again at dinner. But sometimes when I get a really large spawn, like I do now, I'll just take the Betta fry and I'll put them directly in this culture. And this is how I've been successful raising really small fish like this. There's 2 things that tend to kill little baby fish, especially in the first week or 2 when they're so small that they can be difficult to feed. The first is lack of food. They simply don't have enough food in front of them, so they don't get the nutrition they need and they just waste away. So that's a big issue, and to avoid that issue, we tend to feed a lot of food very frequently, which leads to the second problem, which is polluting the water. So lots of food frequently creates a lot of waste, and so when you're trying to avoid the first problem, you often run into the second. So the reason I like putting them in a big green water culture like this, or scooping a lot of green water and putting it into their rearing container, is that way they have food in front of them all the time. So if you look here, you can see that this thing is teeming with life. There's scuds there, yeah, and that helps give us a scale to how small these babies really are. But there's also all these little microorganisms. There's Infusoria, there's baby scuds, little tiny crustaceans, all kinds of things in here. And the fish just all day long can eat. And green water is very clean chemically. It's not clear, like it's hard to see through and it looks dirty, but the truth is it's a really healthy environment because all that algae in the water column keeps the nutrients and waste products and ammonia and nitrite and all that stuff at a minimum, because it just sucks that stuff up and turns it into food for the baby fish. So this is my favorite way to feed little baby fishies and get them started. We're fast forwarding now, so now we're at about 6 times normal speed. And when you're looking at small things that move slowly, sometimes that speed up just helps you helps you see what they're actually doing, because they move so slow sometimes that it's hard to actually see their activity. So that's why I speed it up. It's just fun to watch kind of their little life cycle on fast forward. So after a couple weeks of keeping them in here, I'll start introducing baby brine shrimp, and once I see them eating that really well, I'll start removing them from here and put them in a 5.5-gallon tank, probably, depending on the number and how big they are at that time, for grow out. And that way this culture won't get depleted and it'll be ready for the next batch of fry. Now, if you fed these baby brine shrimp, a few might live, a few might be able to pick at them and tear them apart, but you would lose most of the batch. So that green water is the secret. Now here's a batch that's a few weeks old. Again, the biggest one in here, the tank buster, which I actually need to remove because he might start picking on the other fish, is about 1/4 of an inch or so.
Normally this aquarium is full of water sprite and plants. I removed them so that we could see the fish. If the plants were in here, we would just never see the fish. And there's several in here. I just put it on fast forward where it's 6 times normal speed, just because it helps you see them in all that mulm and stuff. Now, I'm a mulm guy. I know there's controversy, and I can see the points for having mulm and the points for not having it, but in my experience, fry love it. They'll hang out in it, they'll hide in it, they'll browse through it all day long looking for food. And as long as it's not like super bioactive, as long as it's not just fresh poop, but it's actually like algae and kind of inert stuff that's slowly decomposing, as opposed to fresh fish poop, which decomposes really quickly and creates lots of ammonia and things. As long as it's kind of more inert, then I don't think it's a problem. I think it actually helps the fish. And right after this video, I removed that tank buster and put him in a second aquarium I have, which has fish that are closer to his size, just because I didn't want him picking on the littler fish in here. Anyway, that's the best way I've found to raise these up.
All right, let's get a bunch of those out there so people can have tanks full of amazing looking bettas all living together. All right, if you like this stuff, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to like, subscribe, share, hit notification bells, all that jazz, it'd be greatly appreciated. And until next time, I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.